Good morning, everyone tuning in. Welcome to our 2020 Wake Up Entrepreneur event. This is our first of two series that we host. This is the first time ever doing it virtually, but as one of two series that the Hispanic Business Council with the Kissimmee Chamber of Commerce of Kissimmee hosts. My name is Carlos Velez. I'm the acting chairman of the Hispanic Business Council. I have the opportunity to have some great panelists. Some are members of the Osceola Chamber of Commerce, as well as Mr. Ed Ramos, who's the Senior Area Manager with Small Business Administration, with the U.S. Small Business Administration. And he's gonna have a wonderful presentation for us so that we can learn the ins and outs of the different programs that are available with the small businesses. And with that, I also have Monica Medina, who is our AVP of Branch Manager at CenterState Bank in Kissimmee. So thank you for being here this morning. And we also have one of our Kissimmee Chamber of Commerce members, one of our anchor members here is Stella Siracuza. She is a real estate agent and a small business entrepreneur here in Osceola County. So welcome everybody, and thank you for being here this morning. So we want to jump right into the presentation with Mr. Ed Ramos. Ed Ramos, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Awesome, awesome. So Mr. Ramos is going to go over some of our programs that are going to be available now that the government announced that there's going to be a second wave of funding for the small businesses. So Mr. Ramos, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Greetings, everyone. First, I want to thank the Kissimmee Chamber of Commerce Hispanic Business Council for taking the initiative to invite us to talk about this very important program that is so needed by small businesses and self-employed. As Mr. Carlos mentioned, my name is Ed Ramos, Senior Area Manager. I'm assigned to the west side of the territory. I cover Orlando, Orange, all the way to the Gulf Coast. And Osceola is handled by Loni Kayama, but the programs are basically the same. And today what I want to do is give you an idea of what's available. As you all know, there was a lapse in the appropriations for the CARES Act last week on the 16th. So we stopped doing the Paycheck Protection Act loan and the SBA EIDL, and I'll address that. The intent of this presentation today is not only to inform you, but to tell you that you need to be ready so that when the package is signed into law, hopefully today, you should be able to move very fast because we expect that this money is going to run out. Some estimates say within the first week, 6 days. So next slide. So this is the topic of today's presentation, the SBA Disaster Relief Resources for Businesses Impacted by the COVID-19. Next slide. And these are the specific topics that I will try to address. I get a little too wordy, so sometimes, I need a little nudge to tell me to move along because I know that we don't have a whole lot of time to cover this in detail. Next slide, please. So the first thing that we want to talk about is the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP. Next slide. And this program was designed to provide a direct incentive for small businesses to keep workers on the payroll. So the emphasis here is keeping people employed. And the one benefit that everybody's looking for is that this program allows the SBA through the banks that do the loan to forgive the loan amount if all the employees are kept on the payroll for 8 weeks and the money is used for payroll, rent, mortgage, interest, or utilities. The program, the PPP loan is up to $10 million. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get $10 million right off the bat. It's up to whatever you can justify in your numbers. And the lenders will do the screening and they will do the intake of the applications. So the first round, as I mentioned, was exhausted on the 16th of April, and we expect supplemental appropriation to be available this week. So PPP is administered through lenders, so that means that the SBA doesn't get involved in the approval or handling or processing of the applications. We only see the applications once the lender submit those to us through a portal that we call the E-Tran, electronic transaction, when they seek a loan approval. You can apply through any existing SBA 7A lender or through any federally insured depository institution, federally insured credit union, or farm credit system. So when that link at the bottom, it's reopened today, once the supplemental appropriation is signed into law, you'll be able to find all kinds of lenders that participate under this program. So PPP will be available through June 30th, but it's basically a first come, first served program. So the money will run very fast. Next slide. So we get a lot of questions on eligibility, and basically the idea that Congress had for the first round was to make any small business concern that met the size standards for SBA industry-based size standard or the alternative size standard qualify for this program. The regulations that were published allow any business, not necessarily a small business, 501c3 nonprofit organization, 501c19 veterans organizations, or tribal business concern with greater of 500 employees or that met the industry standard if more than 500 employees. And then they made provisions for businesses whose NAICS code begins with 72, which includes accommodations and food services, which I understand that in the Osceola County with the parks, you have a lot of those that may be able to partake. So those types of businesses that have more than one physical location and employ less than 500 employees per location, they can apply per location for the PPP program. And the one caveat is that businesses and entities that are applying for PPP must have been in operation on the 15th of February of 2020. So next slide, please. So the loans are basically going to have the same features: an interest rate of 1%, a maturity of 2 years. The first payment is going to be deferred for 6 months. It's going to be 100% guaranteed by the SBA. The loans will not require collateral, no personal guarantees. There will be no borrower or lender fees payable to SBA. And as I mentioned, there's a 6-month deferral from the date of disbursement. So next slide, please. I mentioned earlier that the maximum loan amount is $10 million and that the loan will be fully forgiven if the funds are used to pay for payroll, interest on mortgages, rent, and utilities. And we have a high expectation that those entities excuse me, that qualify for forgiveness will have spent at least 75% of the forgiven amount on payroll, because again, this is a program to retain employees in the company. Loan payments will also be deferred for 6 months under this program, and forgiveness is based on the employer maintaining or quickly rehiring employees and maintaining salary levels. The forgiveness amount will be reduced if the full-time headcount declines or if salaries and wages decrease. One question that was asked in the past, and we got some clarification from SBA headquarters and U.S. Treasury, is if you have an employee that went into unemployment and now decides that they don't want to come back, as long as you maintain the number of employees that you had as of the 15th of February, you qualify for the program and you qualify for forgiveness. Of course, there's other conditions for forgiveness that we can address later on, but you don't need to bring the same employee back to work for your company to be able to qualify under this program. So we're now in slide 9. So you can apply through any existing 7A lender, and we're adding lenders on a daily basis. We started off with about 3,200. We're now up to about 4,500 lenders. A lot of smaller entities, credit unions, small community banks. If you have a relationship with a particular lender, be advised that that lender may have reached their application capacity So it's not that they don't want to work with you, it's just that they don't have enough capacity to handle any more PPP. So if you are in need of funding, you may need to start knocking on some other doors. But one thing that we suggest is that you maintain a relationship with one lender in particular. I find that throughout my years with the SBA that small business entities, they switch lenders all the time because they can find some economies. And at the end of the day, you have to develop a relationship, and there's got to be some loyalty in there. It's a two-way street. The lender will seek you, but then if you seek and bring business to the lender, they will consider for other increases and other programs in the future. And if you need to get status for a PPP application that was submitted on the first round or that will be submitted in this round, the status updates are provided by the lender, not by SBA, because we don't see the application. Initially, the lender will assign an application number internal to the bank, and once they obtain an SBA approval number, that pretty much gives them an idea that the money has been reserved by the SBA, so that should be a trigger by the lender to send you an email to tell you that your package has been approved. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next major program that we have is an internal program of the SBA. It's called the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Next slide. And this program is handled by the Office of Disaster Assistance. Basically, the Office of Disaster Assistance is tasked under the Small Business Act to make available economic injury disaster loans. Every time there's a disaster, they usually offer physical damage loans when there's floods, wind damage, earthquakes, fires, and other situations that impact the personal or business structure. In this particular disaster, because there were no physical damage, it was just an economic, the ability to generate revenues. So the SBA decided to issue the EIDL. And again, those are working capital loans available to small businesses, small agricultural cooperatives, small aquacultural businesses, and most private nonprofit organizations. So eligible entities may qualify for up to $2 million from the SBA. We'll give you a 30-year term. The interest rate for for-profit entities is 3.75, and for nonprofit organizations is 2.75%. And those rates are set. We have an internal SOP that has been used in the past, so it's a tried and tested method. So it's not like we're grabbing a number out of the air. I know that the prime rate right now is very low, but again, this is something that it's already been set in place, and that's the information that we have to use for these types of loans. So the borrower for the EIDL must be a small business. So this program is not open. The economic injury disaster loan is not open for larger entities. And EIDL amounts under $25,000 require no collateral. If you go above $25,000, then the SBA requires the borrower to pledge something, either the primary residence or some other asset that the SBA can take as a collateral. And we'll work with you if you don't have some residence or something that you can offer. So the loans can be used to pay fixed debt, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills that could have been paid had the disaster not occurred. And the loans are not intended to replace lost sales or profit or for expansion. We see a lot of people that tell us, oh, we have projected. Well, you know, when you talk about the EIDL and projections, that's a no-no, because the EIDL is looking at historical data. So they look at the last year's performance, full fiscal year, and they'll use that to determine what's available. So when you do the PPP, you tell the bank how much money you need. When you do the EIDL, the SBA will make a determination based on your need and based on the historical figures on your business. And all the EIDLs automatically get a 1-year deferment for this disaster. Next slide. So the other program that was created when the CARES Act was passed. It's called the Emergency Loan Advance. The legislation, they call it a grant. In the SBA, we don't want to confuse and muddle the water, so we call it an advance. So the loan advance will provide $1,000 per employee up to $10,000 for economic relief for businesses that are currently impacted by the coronavirus disaster. The funds are made available following a successful application. Our goal is to have the money in the hands of the applicants anywhere from 3 to 5 days. But the reality is that when the applicants submit they hit the send button on the electronic application, it takes us a lot longer because we have to validate the paperwork, and we have a lot of moving parts that are involved in this process. So some of you out there may have experienced a longer delay. Don't worry, if you were approved, the money has been put aside for your entity, so the money will come eventually. And the loan advance may not have to be repaid. And I say may not because we have the loan advance is part of a larger loan request. So if all you want is the loan advance, technically the SBA at the end of this corona disaster may ask you to repay the full amount that you receive as a grant. If you have a larger amount that exceeds the $10,000, then the SBA will probably not ask you to repay it. And that's something that when the final guidance for the round 2 is released today, we may see different language, and this may change because I know that there were a lot of people that were upset during the first wave. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the EIDL and the advanced EIDL are managed by the SBA because they're organic programs of SBA. But the SBA district offices are not able to answer questions, even though we're SBA per se. We SBA district offices are in the regular program and in the disaster program, and there's a barrier to ensure that there's no undue influence from the regular program onto the disaster program. So they don't allow us to see the application database. That's something that has been requested. So if you have an application in the pipeline, if you need to get status, instead of contacting us, you can contact the disaster customer service directly at 1-800-659-2955. They hire several thousand individuals to be the front lines, to be able to answer the first questions. We have a line for hard of hearing or deaf individuals that use the telecommunication device for the deaf, or you can always send an inquiry via email at disastercustomerservice@sba.gov. And if you have an application number, and when you went through the application, more than likely when you finish, the screen showed an application number, and you should have printed or saved that number, written it down somewhere. You can go to that link, disasterloan.sba.gov/ELA, and there's an option in there where you can get the status online. And again, a lot of the people are frustrated because the system says processing or pending. And again, keep in mind this is a national disaster, 50 states and the territories. So basically all the systems have been overwhelmed. SBA has had to improve capacity in our SBA disaster system several times, and we brought in the heavy guns to augment the force, and we still have issues getting all the information at the right buckets at the right times and expectations. So next slide, please. In addition to the 2 loans, we have something that is called SBA Debt Relief. Next slide, please. And basically what this means is the SBA administrator used her authority under the Small Business Act to provide deferment for any existing 7A, 504 microloans for principal, interest, and any fees for the next 6 months. So the SBA is going to pay for those if you have an existing loan. And if you take an an SBA regular product, 7A504 microloan between now and September 27th, the SBA is going to commit to pay for those for 6 months. Next slide. If you have a current SBA disaster loan that is in servicing, what we call regular servicing for either home or business, the SBA is going to provide automatic deferments until December 31st, 2020. The interest will continue to accrue loan because this is U.S. Treasury money, and there was no provision in the CARES Act. So if you have any pre-authorized debit payments going into your loan and you want to take advantage of this, you need to cancel the automatic payments because the SBA is going to continue to receive the payments, but we're not going to send the money back to you. So if you want to take advantage of this, of the deferment, and you have a pre-authorized debit, you need to put a stop to that until this situation is resolved. And if you want to continue to send your payment, hey, God bless you. Thank you for doing that. Next slide. So we do have counseling and training resources. Next slide. And under the CARES Act, our SBA resource partners, SBDC, and the Women Business Centers received additional funding, as well as the Minority Business Development Agency. The idea for this funding is to provide small business owners and self-employed with technical assistance so that they can reinvent themselves and find ways in which they can take this opportunity and turn the disaster into a golden opportunity so they can sell more product, let's say, for example, to the government, who may be needing for services and other additional capability. You can find a resource partner by going to that link in there, sba.gov/local assistance. The closest resource partner is located on the second floor of the Kissimmee Chamber of Commerce. It's called the Small Business Development Center. And if you call the chamber, they should be able to forward your call to them, and they should be able to get you on the queue to get counseling and assistance. And the MBDA, you can go to www.mbda.gov/business centers and find the closest center that can provide assistance to you. Counseling is provided free of charge. Training may be low cost. I believe the Small Business Development Center is doing free webinar training at this time. And if you go to a SCORE facility and you have a mentor, mentorship is always free because SCORE brings more experienced entrepreneurs that have been around the block once before, and they want to share that knowledge with you. Next slide, please. So the next area that was covered under the CARES Act was contracting. Next slide. And for any of you out there who's a federal contractor, Congress included language in the act to modify terms and conditions of a contract to include reimbursement at a billing rate of 40 hours per week for any paid leave, including sick leave. So many contractors were unable to perform their work on site because the facilities, federal facilities, were closed. A lot of us are teleworking. We still provide some essential services in ports, airports, and other locations. So those locations may be open for certain types of contractors, but the regular offices like the IRS, the court system, they're closed. So if you had a contract and you needed to perform services there, more than likely you needed to go on some type of leave. So now there's a provision in there for you to talk to the agency contracting officer to see if you can get this thing reimbursed back to you. And then if you're an 8A program participant, that's a program that we manage within the SBA. Reach out to your assigned business opportunity specialist at your SBA servicing district office, because we do have some provisions that have been made available for companies to self-suspend from participation. And we're always looking for vendors to nominate before FEMA and other agencies that are looking for essential supplies like PPE, mask, and other types of essential services. And business for the federal government continues. Even though we're shelter in place, we're still continuing to perform the basic services to ensure the safety and security of this nation. Next slide. Next slide. So we've been bombarded with questions And so what we try to do is we try to bring forth some answers to some of those questions. So the first question that came when we were building this presentation dealt with faith-based organizations, including houses of worship. Are they eligible to receive the SBA loans under the PPP and the EIDL programs? And initially the answer was no, but then the administrator was able to use her authority, again, under the Small Business Act, and she was able to relax some of the rules and provide some flexibilities to open the door for faith-based organizations to receive SBA loans regardless of whether they provide secular services or not. The second question, does the EIDL loan require collateral? And yes, for loans that exceed $25,000, collateral is required. Keep in mind that when you make an application for EIDL, the SBA is going to make you a loan offer, and if you don't want the loan, you don't have to take it. But if you want less, if you don't want to give up your house or primary residence as a guarantee for the loan, if you're happy with $25,000, the SBA is going to give you $25,000. It's going to write the loan for $25,000. So we're not going to force you to take more than what you want. So what are the payment terms for both of this PPP and EIDL loans? So all EIDL loans under COVID-19 will be 30-year terms. We'll get no payments, a deferment for 12 months, and the PPP loans will have a maturity of 2 years and the deferment for 6 months. I mentioned the interest rate was 3.75 for for-profit entities under the EIDL, 2.75% for nonprofit entities, and 1% for PPP loans for 2 years. Next slide, please. Another question, residential rental properties, are those eligible for EIDL? And yes, the eligibility is based on lost rent. So when you put together your package, if you have any questions or if you need assistance, you can reach out to our partners, SBA resource partners like the Small Business Development Center, Women Business Centers, or even Prospera. They're helping out, filling out those applications, and they can help you put the information on the right bucket so that when you make your loan request, you have a complete package that makes sense and you get the money that you need to help your business recover. Another question that we're getting is, will the business and the employee be better off taking advantage of unemployment benefits rather than using SBA funds? And again, that's a question that is beyond the scope of SBA to answer. I've heard other professionals telling you that if you are in that position where you have that option before you, you need to do an analysis. In which of those avenues will I get the most benefits and the most dollars so that I can keep operating or keep my family, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something that you may want to consider. Can the EIDL loan be used to replace what the owner usually pays themselves, or to help pay a mortgage for a house they will live and work out of? So yes, both conditions and item 6 will be eligible for the use of EIDL funds. The salary paid to themselves is part of the working capital of the business, and the salary is what is used to pay their personal expenses. Next slide. So how do I know if my business falls within SBA Size Standards? Because we mentioned SBA Size Standards both in the EIDL and the PPP. One, because we want to make sure that the benefits go for the EIDL to small business entities, and the PPP, the first round, use the size standards to determine the number of employees. So the information on size standards is available online at the SBA website, sba.gov/size standards. How do I check the status on my EIDL loan application? If you have a username and a password, you can go online at disasterloan.sba.gov/ELA, and you can check yourself. They're going to ask you for your first name, last name, and the application number. And if you're not sure if you submitted a completed application or the application correctly, you can contact the disaster team at 1-800-659-2955, and then they can bring up the application on the screen and they can review it, and then you should be able to provide information to them. or you can wait until you get a call from a loan officer. The worst thing that could happen is that you get a letter of rejection, but you will be given an opportunity to go back and correct and resubmit. The problem is that if you resubmit, you don't go to the top of the queue, you go to the end of the queue. So how does the PPP loan work with the EIDL, the Advanced EIDL, and the SBA Debt Relief Program? The PPP ties into the EIDL program because businesses and organizations that receive EIDLs before June 30th will have the option to refinance their EIDL into a PPP loan if you desire. If the business receives an emergency EIDL grant, that amount will also be subtracted from the amount forgiven through the PPP program. Next slide. So now next slide. So we just want to warn you that there may be some scams and fraud, things to watch for. Every time that we have an emergency situation, there's a lot of people that come out of the woodwork trying to get your hard-earned dollars. So there may be some offers from people claiming to be from the SBA offering you a grant. Usually we don't contact anyone for either regular loans or disaster loans. So if you are contacted by someone, please suspect that that's fraud, that someone is trying to get your information. If you're contacted by someone promising to get approval on an SBA loan and they ask for payment up front or offers of high interest, bridge loan in the interim, again, suspect fraud. We do have specific policies as to the fees that a broker can charge a borrower, 3% for loans of $50,000 or less, 2% for loans $50,000 to $1 million, with an additional 0.25% on amounts over $1 million. Any attempt to charge more than these fees is inappropriate, and if you feel uncomfortable, you can report it to the SBA, and there's a number at the bottom. There's continuous attempts to phishing for information for your personal identifiable information, social security number, bank account number, etc. There's a lot of emails that come in and use the SBA logo, and they could be phishing, trying to obtain information, or they may be redirecting your connection to a malware site or some other place where the hackers reside, where they're trying to steal your information. So the SBA will not send you communications without you asking for it first. And if you have any questions, you can call us at those numbers, 1-800-659-2955 if it's related to a disaster loan, or if it's related to a regular program, you can call 1-800-827-5722. Next slide. So I work for the North Florida District Office. We handle 43 counties. Our main base is out of Jacksonville, but we do have a South Florida District Office in Miami that handles the rest of Florida, and they are in charge of providing services and outreach in Osceola County. You can go to SBA.gov, and there's an option, a button in there where you can find local services, and you can find the nearest SBA person to talk to. And those slides, web addresses in there, SBA.gov/coronavirus tells you everything that you should know about the coronavirus, whether it's wearing protection, washing your hands, where to get a loan, where to get assistance, et cetera, et cetera. And the information is even available in Spanish if we have any Spanish speakers in the call. So that's the end of my gist. I think I'll yield my time to the chairperson.
Well, thank you so much, Ed. You were very thorough with your presentation. I actually had a question, which I thought about when I was listening to your presentation. What happens if a business was about to open or was only in business for 30 days? Do they still qualify for something like this?
If they were in business for the PPP on the 15th of February, yes, they would qualify for that. For the EIDL, of course, they can submit an application. Unfortunately, on this disaster, we don't have FEMA working with us, where they can offer personal grants and other individual grants. So it would be up to the the SBA Disaster Office, and I don't know if someone that has been operating for only 30 days will qualify for something like this. I don't think the impact will be that severe, but I could be wrong. There's no harm in asking and talking to our disaster folks. So they should call the SBA Disaster 800-659-2955 and ask that question.
Awesome. And with the advanced program, I was unsure of that. Is that something that business owners can apply for, or employees can, people that are under like a 1099, can they apply for something like this?
Well, if they do a 1099 and they do Schedule C, they're considered a small business person.
Gotcha. All
so
right.
that opens the door for them to ask for any of the programs that we have available on the books. But if you don't do a Schedule C, that means that they're probably employed by somebody else, and the only option before them will be unemployment.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Ed, for that presentation. I think that was great. I actually had a few questions. Let's see, for Monica. I know she works for CenterState Bank, and a lot of these small business owners are going to go out to your bank. Can you tell us how important it is to make sure that everyone is on the payroll when they submit an application on this?
Greetings, everyone. Monica Medina here with CenterState Bank. It's very important, and maybe here our partners can reassure that you need to have your employees on W-2. It came, now that we have this help, the PPP, one of the documents that you have to provide is W-2. You need to show that ledger showing your employees in W-2. We were not able to add your 1099s. We were not. Again, 1099, like Ed say, if they Schedule C, they could go ahead and do their own application. But it's very important for you to have your W-2 because we could cover those employees with the PPP.
Gotcha, perfect. So that goes out to those businesses that may have a few employees. I've heard from some small businesses that they might employ their teenage sons or maybe some of their family members. And even those people is really important to put on your payroll, especially when you're applying for these type of loans so that you can maximize your benefit, right? Monica, and right now with this pandemic going on, what's the easiest way to get in touch with you at the bank?
Okay, we are here regular hours, 8 to 6, drive-through only. I do see clients with appointments. You really don't need to see me if you need to apply. We could go ahead and maybe send out my email information. That will be the best contact, and my phone number. And as soon as this gets fully approved, we have a link that we can provide to the customer, the client, so they can go ahead, apply, and get into the queue. Gotcha.
And can you tell us one of the things of the turnaways, like the people you turn away? What is the main reason? Is it paperwork? Do they don't have all their paperwork and you have to turn them away? Or can you tell us a little bit about that?
And not turning away. It would just delay the process.
Gotcha. Okay.
I will ask you in detail what you need, but if we're missing one document, that underwriter is going to say, okay, this is missing your W-2 or your payroll for 2020. They're going to put it aside. They're going to send an email to the relationship manager and say, can you request this? While that's getting to me, they pick up another package that is ready to go. By the time I get to the client, it can be another 48 hours. It's another 2 to 3 days delayed. We will not turn you away, but it will delay the process. So now maybe in front of you, now we have another 10 that will be behind you. So it's just very important. Once you submit that application, you have everything in detail. And again, it's not much, but it's very important for you to have all those documents attached when you put that application.
And what's the best way to, go ahead, Estela, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Monica, for those small businesses that perhaps do not have themselves on W-2s and on payroll, are they able to apply for the EIDL, the $10,000 emergency advance, if they cannot qualify or they don't have all the documents for the PPP loan?
Correct, because it's just a small questionnaire that they complete. It's $10,000. The ones that I had, they didn't have nothing to submit, just $10,000. And actually, I had one client that he had 2 1099 employees. I wasn't able to add those to the loan amount, but he had requested, he got $9,000 on the EIDL. No.
Also, one more question. How do you determine what the loan amount is? I heard or read somewhere of everything that I've been trying to keep up with, that it's 2.5 times your monthly payroll. However, these funds are also to be used for rents or mortgages. So how does a business owner determine what the loan amount is, or do you determine that amount for them?
Okay, and to tell you, because of the paperwork that we have done, we're gonna go for your payroll. Payroll, if it's your payroll and we do the math and it comes out to that, times 2.5, this amount, that's what we're gonna do the loan. But if you requested another 10,000 for utilities, you have to provide that documentation. As long as we have the backup, we'll go ahead and add it. Because otherwise, you're gonna be hurting at the end once you had it, go ahead, either repay it or they're gonna forgive that amount. So at this point, we're just gonna go payroll. If you have that document, the mortgage for the property interest, we'll go ahead and add it, but we have to make sure we have the documents attached.
And one more question. The Hector mentioned that these funds may be forgiven. So can you clarify, as a business owner, we are borrowing this money and we will have to pay it back. Is that correct, or will it be forgiven? Can we clarify that? There's a misconception out there that these are funds that we won't have to pay back. Yet we're talking about 2-year maturity dates and deferment of payments for 6 months. Would you clarify if these are funds that we are having to pay back?
That I want to be able to answer. I don't know if Ed can help me with that, Ed?
Yes. So the intent of the legislation is to provide forgiveness for those employers that maintain the employees for 8 weeks in the payroll, and there's a number of documents that they need to maintain, and SBA will be publishing an application that the borrowers will need to submit to the lender to request forgiveness. And among the documents that they have to provide, they'd have to provide documents that verify the number of full-time equivalent employees on payroll, paid rates for those periods used to verify them you met the staffing and pay requirements, payroll reports from the payroll provider, payroll tax filings, the Form 941, income, payroll, and unemployment insurance filings from the state, documents verifying and retirement and health insurance contributions, document verifying eligible interest, rent, and utility payments, canceled checks, payments, receipts, account statements, and any other information that the bank will ask for to feel comfortable for them to turn around and go to the SBA and say, we're looking for 100% forgiveness, or we're looking for 80% forgiveness. Any amounts that are not forgiven will continue to be charged interest. And I believe the interest rate will be the existing lowest interest rate, which is 4% after the 2 years are over.
When would we be applying for that forgiveness? 8 weeks after we receive the loan?
Yes, you need to establish a dialogue with the lender once you fulfill all the requirements, and the sooner you have fulfilled the requirements and the lenders get a little bit more guidance from the U.S. Treasury and the SBA, I'm sure that they will go back to those individuals that applied and received a PPP loan to say, this is how you request forgiveness from my institution.
Actually, I had a quick question. You mentioned lost rent for people that have rental properties. Is it only for people that have property management companies, or can an investor that has a few rental properties, can they also apply?
Can an investor that has rental properties?
Yeah, or somebody who has like a few properties that they rent out, or 1 or 2, can those type of people apply for the lost rent, or is that only for people or businesses that are property management companies?
No, if the individual that has those properties is filing as a business, yes, certainly that opens the door for them to apply for PPP for the lost rent.
Gotcha. But for let's say for an individual that just happens to have another house, can they apply for that? Not filing as a business, just as a second home or like.
Not a PPP, and if they, again, if they don't file a Schedule C as on the 1040, or if they don't exist as a business, then more than likely they don't qualify for the SBA EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan, either.
That's good to know, because I feel like there's a few people out there that may be a little bit misconstrued with that information. So thank you for clearing that up. Actually, Stella, I had a question for you. You're a small business entrepreneur here, you're a real estate agent. And I just want to see how much or what are the biggest things you learned through this pandemic as a small business owner so far? Have you learned so far?
The experiences that I had as a business owner during the 2008, 2009, and 2010 years helped me, Carlos. So I think they made me stronger and they allowed me to prepare for today. The best advice that I was given by someone is stay proactive. Don't freeze. Look for information, reach out to your lenders, reach out to your vendors, negotiate payment terms, make partial payments if you can, and extend the terms if possible. Reinvent yourself as a business. If you did not deliver, look to deliver. If you were not mobile, look to be mobile. But stay proactive and continue to move forward with the conviction that this will pass. It will not last forever, and you'll make it through. That's my best input.
Thank you. And what I know that some businesses were either expanding or remodeling through some of, right before. And one of those people is yourself, and what are some of the things that you had to shift around and do to just kind of, if we can't do this, let's do that?
Well, we have a sitting area where our customers would come in and sit for lunch, and obviously that has been closed. So the other part of the market is still open. So what we have continued to do is renovate that area that is now closed. And so we painted the inside of our store, replaced some equipment. We're installing new flooring, and I had already planned this before all of this began. And initially I was a little afraid because you didn't plan to be shut down or part of your business to be shut down. But like I said, we've stayed proactive. We've shortened the hours operational wise. We closed an hour early, and that extra time we're taking to disinfect the area. And we're also taking advantage to renovate so that when things do get back on track, and they will, we'll have an improved area for our customers.
So this is good. So you took this pandemic, you took advantage of the fact that we have to practice social distancing, and you took an area that is gonna eventually open when this is all over.
Correct.
And you don't have to sacrifice business hours by closing maybe earlier down the road, or maybe one day a week to get this project completed. So, so
the
kudos
one
to you.
area that was closed is the area we're focusing on right now, and again, staying proactive.
So the lesson here is we got to keep the wheels turning.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't stop. So that's great information. That's really all the time that we have this morning. And I really want to thank the Kissimmee Chamber of Commerce for allowing us to get together in this platform. Ed Ramos, this information was excellent. I think it was very in-depth and thorough. It left me without questions, my friend. You answered everything I had.
Yes, thank you.
If I could, I mentioned that we gave monies to SBDC and the Women Business Centers and MBDA. So use this downtime to talk to them and see if there are ways that you can reinvent to take advantage of these new opportunities. There's a lot of people sitting at home they're bored. They just want to do something else. And if you can project your business or your product or your services, maybe that's a golden opportunity for you as a business person. So take advantage.
Absolutely.
And if I may add one more thing, I just want my gratitude for everyone involved. bankers are working long hours processing these applications, and so be patient with them. And Monica, thank you for the long hours. I know that you are investing in every banker out there that is helping the small businesses. You cannot imagine how appreciated you are right now.
Thank
Yes,
you, thank you. That means a lot to us.
Yeah.
And yes, and one more thing that I can add, be patient, like she said, it is taking, just to give you an idea, from the time you place an application, maybe 10 days before you hear from your lender or your bank, and then maybe another 3 to 4 days before you get funding. There's a lot of applications. The one that maybe did it at the beginning will quicker, but now it's taking a little longer. And this second round might be a little longer because we have people in the queue that were left out from the first time. So just be patient with us. We'll get to you.
Yes. Again, I want to remind everybody that the SBDA office is located inside the Kissimmee Chamber of Commerce office building in the second floor. And Prospera is also a partner of the Kissimmee Chamber of Commerce. When we do reopen, they are available every Tuesday, but you can always visit their website. And I believe they have, they're answering phones. So you may be able to call them or send them an email. And again, I want to thank everyone on here, Christina for helping us out, Monica for representing the bank, and Stella for being our panelist as a small business entrepreneur, and Ed, we can't thank you enough for providing this great information. This presentation is also going to be available on our website at the Kissimmee Chamber of Commerce website. And I hope to see everybody in person real soon. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.